All right. Yes, please. We're going to get started here. I'm Richard Newell. I'm a member of the Duke faculty. I'm the director of the Duke University Energy Initiative. And really happy to welcome you to this panel discussion on increasing energy efficiency through community engagement. Our panelists are going to tell you about their experience with a program called, from the city of Charlotte, called Envision Charlotte, which aims to build the most sustainable urban core in the nation. Before they begin, I just want to tell you very briefly about the Energy Initiative at Duke University, for those of you who aren't already familiar with it. The Energy Initiative is a university-wide interdisciplinary collaboration. It cuts across arts and sciences, engineering, law, policy, business, and the environment. The focus of the Energy Initiative across Duke is on advancing an accessible, affordable, reliable, and clean energy system. And so we're really thrilled to have the panelists today help us do that. Energy Initiative is focused on educating future energy innovators, researching to create new solutions, and engaging with business and government leaders to help improve energy decisions. If you'd like to learn more about the Energy Initiative, please check out our website, energy.duke.edu. You can sign up for one or more of our email lists to find out about future events. You can also sign up there for listserv. We've got a number of additional events occurring this semester before the semester closes. You're all welcome to those. And now I want to hand it over to Jim Rogers, the former CEO of Duke Energy, and he's now one of the inaugural Rubenstein Fellows at Duke University. He's been here for this academic year. He co-taught a groundbreaking course on renewables in the world's poor, focused on how to meet the needs of the 1.2 billion people who do not currently have access to power, and he's currently writing a book on the same topic. Jim has also been gracious enough to work with something we call power lunches, which are focused seminars. He's worked on mentoring with students, and he's also held office hours where students have access to his many, many years of wisdom in energy, environmental policy, and business development. So let's take a moment to thank Jim for his work, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you. Richard, thank you very much. Delighted to be here today, delighted to moderate this panel. I want y'all to think of this panel as a warm-up for the game tonight. Okay, maybe not, but we'll do our best to do that. And let me just kick off before I introduce our panel and say Envision Charlotte was something that came together in 2011. And basically, it was tied in with an effort to create Charlotte as an energy hub. And so, well, how can we be an energy hub unless we in the downtown community area come together and have a more efficient use of electricity in the community? It's a perfect public-private partnership. The downtown area, over 60 properties joined in, over 20 million square feet, and they made a commitment to reduce their usage of electricity 20% from 2011 to 2016. Duke Energy and Cisco provided upfront roughly $5.3 million to buy the monitoring equipment. Duke was able to recover, as well as Cisco. Cisco recovered 20% of the 5.3. Duke recovered 80% of the 5.3 through the savings that came from the deployment. The one thing I would say about this program that I think is unique, but also gives you a sense of the way forward in terms of reducing demand for electricity, is that it started with a competition between the buildings, with kiosks in the lobbies of every building. And from that competitive spirit came behavioral change. And on the heels of behavioral change came the deployment of technologies that actually allow the buildings to operate in a more efficient way. Quite frankly, that's the roadmap to producing significant productivity gains in the use of electricity. And I thought that this whole project was unique in the United States. It was the first city to come together and make that commitment. So with that, let me start, Rob, and just come across. I'm going right to left.
Good afternoon.
I don't know if this is the Wisconsin side, the Duke side.
Well, this is the Duke chair right here. I'm a Duke alum, so I'm pulling with you guys tonight, and very glad to be here. Thank you.
That's great. Tell us who you...
So I work for Bank of America, and we support Envision Charlotte financially. I'm also on the board of Bank of America, and my interest is twofold with Envision Charlotte. Number one, we're very interested in the nonprofit itself and all of the great things that Jim focused on. I also manage our real estate portfolio in the southeastern United States, so that's a big chunk of buildings, and all the activity that we do, we can learn from with this program to deploy elsewhere over time, which is a big goal of ours.
Rob, thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin Franklin. I'm with Duke Energy. I now serve on the board of Envision Charlotte for Duke Energy. I previously managed the behavioral programs that Jim mentioned that saved or contributed to some of the savings. I now have responsibility for delivering products and services to our residential and commercial customer base across our 6 jurisdictions.
Kevin, thank you.
Sure. Rob Focus. I'm the Energy and Sustainability Manager for the City of Charlotte. And I've been involved with Envision from very early on and now a board member. And interestingly, in Charlotte, one of the things that Envision has done is really set us apart in the smart city space, and we can talk more about that later, but I'm very involved in that space now too.
He also graduated, just to show you how we're filling out the panel, from Duke, from the law school and the environmental science school.
That's right.
Yeah, Tom Shircliff. I'm co-founder of Intelligent Buildings, and we were a consulting company on the project, and also served as the founding chairman of the nonprofit Envision Charlotte. And I'm sorry, but I went to NC State, but I'm still with you tonight.
Are you though?
That's not a close.
I am the.
That's not a close call.
All right, so I'm really in the minority here because I'm an Ohio State grad, so Big Ten conference. Sorry.
Did you talk about? Are you talking about football?
No, but Kurt Radkin from Wells Fargo. I'm in the corporate properties group, and similar to Rob, kind of chief cat herder for all things sustainable and energy efficiency driven within that group, and also sit on the board of Envision Charlotte.
Let me start with you, if I may, with a question. How do you see the project continuing in the future? And I'd like each of y'all to just address that from your perspective.
Starting with me.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you go to Ohio State.
I'll tell you, the behavioral component is a big deal. There's lots of levers we can pull from an energy efficiency strategy, trying to put in LED lighting controls, or doing other things with set points. But I think at the end of the day, you can't deploy technology fast enough to make as much difference as we need to make. And so this idea that it's everyone's accountability to kind of take action, I think is huge, and certainly the Envision Charlotte effort around really trying to get organization around how to drive that behavioral change was a critical element, and we're trying to continue to mirror that every day, kind of, and scale that well beyond Charlotte. We've got a big portfolio, so we're trying to think about that on a broader scale.
Yeah, well, I think going deeper, and one of the reasons the nonprofit was formed was once we moved past, or saw the opportunity to move past even energy, what we could do with water and waste. And I think that's an opportunity we've been realizing. The other thing that was most exciting to me in the beginning was it was so special that I thought that, and we all thought, that it could be a model for any urban community in the world. And the response we've gotten has been indicative that is the case. So I think that's another possibility to keep sharing and replicating this in other communities.
Yeah, I think the sky is the limit with Envision. I think we have a huge opportunity. As Tom mentioned, we're focused not only on energy reduction, but waste reduction, water reduction, and improving air quality. And one of the keys to our success, and one of the things we recognized really early, and something we were able to build on, was Charlotte's spirit of collaboration. As Jim mentioned, it's a public-private partnership, And that's how we're really able to move the dial in Charlotte, is that we're able to not only get all these seemingly disparate groups together, but they're able to work together, come up with some ideas, and then implement them. And I think as long as that core stays intact, then we can just keep moving forward.
Great. Kevin?
Yeah, what they said. Yeah, I mean, I think going beyond energy has been interesting to watch and be part of. When I joined the board back in 2013, the name of the Energy Committee was the Smart Energy Now Committee, which was the behavioral program, and has now become the Energy Committee, which Rob actually chairs. So the evolution of some of that into deeper opportunities, additional opportunities, some of the partnerships with UNC Charlotte have actually been pretty tremendous to watch over time as students that are in these disciplines have an opportunity to take their learning outside of the classroom and actually put it in the real world in working with these buildings, doing audits of these buildings, performing recommendations for these buildings on equipment upgrades and opportunities. So it's been interesting to watch over time that academic along with the public-private piece and the components they continue to bring both in the energy realm as well as with water, waste, and certainly the air component is.
Couldn't agree more with all of you. I think that awareness for a company of our size is really critical within our employment base. You know, we've got several 100,000 people, and we've got a core group that are very passionate about sustainability, and they want to be involved any way they can, and this is a vehicle to help them do that. But it's also a vehicle that we can use through our internal My Environment communications to talk about opportunities. And then, you know, specifically as it relates to Charlotte, the public-private partnership, the demonstration of the model has been critical, because I think that's one of the challenges when you go outside of Charlotte and go outside of the U.S. It's getting these different constituencies to work together. And Charlotte's a small enough community and a driven, you know, pro-business community that we're able to bring those constituents together and create success and then demonstrate that we can take the template to other places, which is ultimately what we want to do.
Rob, how does this benefit the city and the branding of Charlotte?
It has been a huge opportunity for the city branding-wise. Tom hinted at this, but as the word of Envision got out, not only in the national community but the international community, people really recognized that we had something unique here. You know, we talk about being the first in the United States with this unique model. I think that was true. But even as I've had the opportunity to travel abroad, specifically to Amsterdam and Barcelona, talking about this, and I have people coming up from all over Europe and saying, wow, this is something really amazing that you have here. Not only are you taking this technology, but the way that you're able to work together. And in Amsterdam, what really struck me is because Amsterdam people always think of Amsterdam as having so many of these projects, and they do, is they love the behavior change that we're focused on, because they're not as focused on the behavior change piece of it. So we're continuing to do that. So as I said, I think as we do more work, it's just going to brand Charlotte, you know, put us in an even better light going forward.
Great. Kevin, how does the utility, I mean, the traditional thinking is the more utilities sell, the better they do. How does this project work for Duke?
Sure. So with the recovery mechanisms that we have in place, we're actually incentivized to promote and encourage reductions of our products. So it's a fairly unique, in some regard, incentive mechanism. Not all our jurisdictions have it, but we're certainly lucky enough here in the Carolinas to have it. So it puts energy efficiency and our promotion of energy efficiency on a level playing field, if not a slightly better playing field, than the traditional utility model of actually putting steel in the ground, producing a kilowatt hour, and putting that back in a rate base. So it's made it a competitive alternative, certainly from a financial standpoint, and provides a nice platform for us to interact with our customers as well in their interest.
The next question is for Robert, Kurt, and Tom. And that is, how does this project benefit you as a corporate entity? This is bragging time.
Well, I will tell you, I can maybe speak for everybody and say that there was a corporate citizen dimension to it. So it was just very exciting to be a part of it with our company name, and that was fulfilling. But as Rob was saying earlier, that the reaction has been so great. People are calling and wanting to know, how do we do this? And we're currently engaged in 3 other cities in the U.S. and trying to help put together these kind of programs. So it's been indirectly and directly beneficial for us.
Great.
Yeah, from a Wells perspective, Charlotte is our #1 team member city, I guess. We've got over 20,000 team members as part of the greater Charlotte area. And, you know, so it's a big deal for our company. It dovetails really well with the renewed environmental commitment that we came out with a couple of years ago. And again, it's kind of this behavioral piece that we haven't spent a lot of time thinking about internally within our company. We're thinking about a lot of other things that drive, and we've got a kind of a grassroots green team member community within our organization that are volunteers that are trying to drive this. And it actually worked really well in the Envision Charlotte model to kind of leverage those resources to, you know, champion some of these campaigns that were going on within the buildings to really try to drive behavioral change. And so it was a great experience for us and something that we want to try to mirror in other communities.
I would say Wells and B of A are very similar. We've made a very public $70 billion environmental commitment or sustainability commitment. The large chunk of that investment goes through, you know, the banking business model, how we lend, where we get involved. There is a piece that goes into philanthropic efforts, and we certainly are supporting Envision Charlotte in that way as well. But also we've made commitments operationally, which is in a large part where my role comes in. So these real estate properties all over the globe that we have, and they, you know, range from big data centers and trading floors to little banking centers to office buildings, warehouses, everything in between you can imagine, and there are thousands of them. And we are looking for ways to be more operationally efficient, and we've made commitments, you know, regarding water usage, regarding you know, emissions reductions, regarding waste stream reductions. And in some areas we're doing extremely well. In other areas we've got challenges, and we think this model can help us learn. Like waste diversion, for instance, is something we're just getting into as one of the 4 main pillars at Envision Charlotte. There's still a lot of opportunity there. I mean, these big companies and these big buildings create a lot of waste, and we need to get better at how we recycle more of it.
Terrific. I guess my next question, and Rob, I'll start with you, and I'd like all of you to answer it. What were we started down the road with certain benefits that we expected. What were the unexpected benefits from this?
The first one that comes to mind are those synergies. When you get this many different entities working together, there are just synergies that you might not think of when you first start out. So I think maybe Kevin mentioned UNC Charlotte, which is just, the main campus is just northeast of Charlotte, and they're approaching 30,000 students. It's grown tremendously. But they have a lot of phenomenal resources on site, and they're very close, and they have a real interest for their students and for their faculty to have real-world experiences. So as a board and as a nonprofit, and we have a representative from UNC on the board, we've been able to find opportunities to really partner with them. If you notice, one of the things I'm most excited about is the collaboration and partnerships. So to me, that's one of the things I don't think we saw. We were very focused initially on, okay, we've got to get smart energy now up and running. But then as we started looking around at who's doing what, we realized, oh, we could pull this group in and we can pull this group in and start getting synergies and really moving together as a team.
In addition to the synergies, I would say it was really interesting how this helped so many of the other organizations' existing goals. So whether it was research and development, whether it was sustainability with the corporation, whether it was economic development, it almost looked like it was a program waiting to happen that everybody jumped onto, even for their own benefit. So there was a lot of catalytic effect from that.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to echo what both of you guys said. I think, you know, Charlotte does these public-private partnerships really well. I think Envision Charlotte's just been one more example where you get like-minded people together trying to row the boat in one general direction, and things just happen. They just start to click, and you start to to really see some opportunities to drive it even further than what you expected. And I think it's been all of that and more for us.
Kevin?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would take it back to kind of the behavioral change piece to put some numbers to it. When we started, I think our initial anticipation was in the 4 to 5% range for behavioral change in these office buildings, and we achieved over 6% energy savings, which was fairly unexpected, I think, on our end as to the magnitude. Envision Charlotte achieved 8.4% in the first 3 years, with the behavioral piece being 6.2. So in addition to some of the, certainly the public-private collaborations and some of those things, certainly, what we achieved was much higher than what we initially expected.
A couple things come to mind. I think the ability to for businesses to get exposed to new technologies and new ways of addressing some of the challenges we have with the waste stream is great. I mean, we're seeing, they're coming out of the woodwork to work with Envision Charlotte and show us what they have to offer, and we can look at them and look at potential alliances. It's a balancing act because there's a competing interest there, but there's great technology out there, and this becomes a vehicle to see it and test it, which is we're absolutely doing. And the collaboration with UNC Charlotte has been really amazing because, the Duke initiative, energy initiative, which we were just learning about earlier this afternoon, very similar. I mean, they've got a curriculum-based program now and majors being developed that are partly tapping into some of the data analytics and stuff that are supporting what we do. So it's pretty neat.
From my standpoint, having been there when we conceived it, the unexpected benefit that y'all talk about routinely as part of it is turning to dealing with water and waste. We never envisioned that when we focused initially just on reducing the amount of electricity use within the city during those peak periods. So that to me has there at the beginning but then vanished. That's kind of a remarkable evolution of what y'all are trying to achieve. Kind of in a similar way, what do y'all think the greatest challenge has been? I mean, it can't be sweetness and light all the way. There's got to have been some challenges or maybe even some unexpected downside. I mean, let's be blunt. We talked about the benefits, talk about the challenges and unexpected downside. And Kevin, since you used to hang out in my neighborhood, I'm going to ask you to answer that first.
I'm going to have to duck and cover from these guys in a second. I think on our end, we had a couple challenges. One was on the technology side. We're using cellular service to try to bring back the interval meter data. So not to get overly complex here, but we have billable meters that sit on the building, look like the ones that sit on the side of your house or apartments, and we actually have a shadow meter that sits next to it. That meter is actually reading energy usage every 15 minutes, and we bring that back and we can aggregate and look at what the actual use uptown is at any given 15-minute interval, and we've actually built algorithms to show that on a second-by-second basis. We use a cellular network to bring that back. If you've ever been into a main city, cellular networks aren't great sometimes. There's certainly dead areas, and we had a lot of technology, some technology issues in being able to try to pick that cell signal up, be able to bring it back. We were creating boosters that weren't necessarily yet available, so it was kind of new technology at the time, and working with Cisco and certainly with Verizon. Even on the kiosk side, we were using 4G at the time, and 4G was relatively new when this first launched. And so on the technology side, we're using boosters that are first of their kind, just developed out of the lab, seeing how they work, can't fall back to 3G like our phones can today. So we're still dealing with some of those technology issues. Our meters are down in vaults under buildings, which makes it even more complex to try to get out of the building and pick that signal up. So we did run into some technology issues. We did a lot of work. There were a lot of partnerships in trying to overcome some of those, and we did. We still run into those and face those from time to time, but it was a learning experience and certainly is helping set the ground for something Rob mentioned around smart cities. I think the other component that we probably run into some challenges with is around the data, and certainly data sharing and the aggregation of data. And that, we certainly have certain requirements from a utility standpoint that are placed upon us that are external to us around our ability to share that data and being able to come up with some agreeable solutions. Rob's laughing. Be able to come up with some agreeable solutions of how we can kind of integrate that data, share that data, and use that data, has been a challenge.
Rob?
Well, it's kind of fascinating because Kevin and I have been deep into this over many months, but data sharing for big corporations, it's amazing what they can be afraid of. And so if you think about, you know, do I really want my big office building with a trading floor to be propped up next to an all-office building that looks a whole lot more energy efficient because it's not sucking up all the power to trade, you know, you name it, worldwide 24/7. And so you have to build a story about why this is important and that we can differentiate the uses in the building to, you know, disaggregate the data and make it look more fair and not put a, you know, some kind of a label on a particular building. So that's really important. And then the other thing is, I can tell you, and I'm sure that Kurt has the same issue, there are plenty of jurisdictions where we have buildings where we have to report more than we do in Charlotte, you know, by mandate. So, you know, you've got to create the awareness that this isn't all that special. It's just not being done in Charlotte. You know, we're doing it because we're required to do it by other governmental entities. So let's just move on and share the data and learn from it.
Rob?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my collaboration theme. And I'm glad you asked the question because there's a flip side to collaboration, right? Kurt mentioned herding cats, and that's what we're doing a lot of times. I mean, this is a really big project. You know, there are 5 of us here, but there's 61 buildings, 20 million plus square feet. You think of all the different silos, right? You hear about everybody works in their silos, and we are constantly working to knock down those silos, and you're dealing often with, you know, decades of institutional norms that you're trying to address. So, you know, there's one, just a basic communication hurdle, you know, making sure everyone that needs to be in the loop is in the loop. For example, you talk about the technology. Kevin was very involved in working to get the infrastructure up for what's called Charlotte Smart Water, where we're basically collecting all this water data. And we have Charlotte Water involved, Duke Energy's involved, Charlotte Department of Transportation is involved because they oversee the right-of-way. And everything doesn't necessarily go smoothly, you know, and there are moments where, you know, the right hand might not know what the left hand is doing, but at the end, you know, we're able to work it through. But I think communication is the key to addressing those situations.
Kurt, you're in a unique place to see all this.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go back to the data comment. Data for me is key, and especially when you're trying to drive a behavioral change, letting individuals who want to engage in that effort understand if they're making a difference, I think is really important. And you know, getting to a level of transparency and predictability around the data, I think, is really important. Ourselves, much like Rob and the B of A team, we've got operational goals that we try to track and measure, and 2014 was the first year we started doing that on a quarterly basis and really getting to a level of transparency that we hadn't had before. And I think it gives you a better perspective about, you know, how are you still on track with that north on the compass and moving in the right direction, or has something gone sideways? So I think especially as we start to launch these other programs in waste and water, being predictable and transparent about the data and about the results is really important.
Tom, tell us a little bit from your perspective, because you're working with other cities now and you're seeing kind of how they're moving through the process, and no project goes smooth. There's always things that are tough.
And also, as our role as a consultant to Duke, we had a responsibility to get to a result. And so one of our challenges was too many great ideas. So you start this big idea, wow, it's going to change the world. You attract all these people to you, and they're like, oh, we should do this, and ask the building owners to invest in that, and we should call these people, and we should go outside of here. And we knew if we didn't have laser focus, we would be like many other environmental and smart city groups where literally all things to all people. And actually, we canvassed about 10 around the country, and that was the feedback that we got. We have so many programs going, it's hard to say in an elevator pitch what we are. And we said we are downtown Charlotte, commercial office buildings, over 10,000 square feet, connect and measure, and that's what we are. And it was hard, but we did not go outside of those bumpers until we had a program in place, and then we were at a place to kind of expand from there. So it's funny, too many great ideas can dilute the program.
Well, you know, that kind of raises an interesting question where, and I'm going to be challenging in kind of the way I frame it. We were going to do a 20% reduction by 16. This is 15. I think the way I measure it by reading the paper, at least the Charlotte Observer, and assuming it's true, is that we're roughly at 8%. And so my question is, how do we get to 8 from 8 today? And Tom, I want to stay with you.
Sure.
8 today to 20 by the end of 16.
Sure, so at this point you need to expand the methods, right? So in the beginning, some of those focus aspects were really about geography and use type, not limiting how we could get there. And we really wanted to take them in some kind of an order, connect and measure, because if we didn't have the needle, we couldn't measure anything. Then it was awareness and behavior, which was really the groundbreaking thing, because awareness and behavior for 100,000 people hadn't been done very well before at all. And so to your point now, we're moving into creative financing, more solution partners, really broadening the way that we get there. So I think the idea was it was going to take a little bit longer to get the beachhead, and now we have lots more creativity. I think the velocity will pick up now to get to that second half.
Now let me, Kevin, ask you that question. I mean, I'm the guy that made the commitment, okay, in 11.
And we appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'll see you after class.
Yeah, and I just want to know, how are we going to get to that goal line?
Right. It's a good question. I'll let Rob chime in as well on the Energy Committee side. But I think to echo some of that, I mean, we got 6.2% of the way there on behavior change. And quite honestly, the range of reductions that we saw building to building were incredible. We saw some buildings that actually increased their usage. We had some buildings that were down over 20%. And this is third-party verified measured data. This is not Duke reporting the data. So we think there's a lot more opportunity, one, on the behavioral side to continue to churn through some of that. But certainly, and through Rob's leadership, we're looking at other opportunities to engage. And I mentioned UNC Charlotte as an example. We're doing a building energy roundtable. So what we quickly learned is that a lot of these buildings don't necessarily have the expertise that Rob's building would have, or that Kurt's buildings will have, in actually how they manage and how they operate. And so we're actually leveraging the students to actually come in, audit and assess those buildings and look for opportunities to reduce energy usage. And we're actually seeing energy reduction opportunities, I think, north of 20%. And being able to bring financing options available, being able to bring partners available that can complete the work has really removed quite a few of the barriers, I think, that some of these buildings encounter, and not knowing where to start and what to do, and being hammered externally, vendor after vendor after vendor, and not knowing kind of what's the truth and what's not. So I think we've done a pretty good job. Rob has done a great job in really inventorying the products that we have, really inventorying the efforts and initiatives that we have, and looking at how close can we get to that 20% sustained number at the end of 16 from where we are today. What initiatives do we have to get there? What gaps do we have? And continuing to use what we've put together as an energy committee with a number of representatives on it, of trying to come up with some of that gap analysis, performing that gap analysis, and looking at additional initiatives.
Rob?
You summarized it really well. I think operational issues are a big opportunity for us. So we've tapped into behavior. We need to spread behavior in a grassroots basis everywhere we can, and it's gotten us halfway there. But we have just begun to scratch the surface on just this universe of 60 buildings and understanding how are they operating. Are they efficient? Are they not efficient? Do they have smart systems in their buildings? And if they do they know how to use them? You know, we've got a lot of expertise that we can share as a sort of a free resource within this little realm that, you know, they're very sophisticated, you know, building management system managers that can help some of these people that may not know how these things work. Or we can also look at them and say, you know, you don't have one, but you can put one in and you'll get a payback in 2.5, 3 years, whatever, depending on the system. And some are so easy, it's simply changing out lighting systems, and their paybacks are wonderful on those, and the energy savings are wonderful too. So the level of sophistication and knowledge varies within the universe, but we all benefit by having the collaboration.
I think we continue to learn too, if you don't mind.
Sure,
on the, we talked about the challenges, and we talked about 61 buildings. Well, that seems easy. There's 61 people to talk. No. right? Buildings are constantly being sold, new property managers are being hired, others are being let go, and you're continuing trying to engage and influence. But beyond that, you've got tenants that sit in those buildings. We have certain buildings that are single tenant buildings, meaning that the same owner is the tenant in the building. We have others that every other floor you've got a different tenant sitting on. And as you're trying to create and articulate value propositions to those groups, for them to connect, to engage into some of these efforts, to push their building owners, to push their property managers, partake in some of this, to look at these additional opportunities, that can be a challenge because everyone has their own motivations. And when you're not paying a utility bill, but I'm encouraging you to reduce, I've got to tap into something other than financial and how I'm going to do that. And I think we've learned a lot over time, and we're not great at it, but we're better than we were when we started in trying to do that. So even trying to build the initial engagement with these buildings and get the contract signed was a challenge. But even when we overcame that, we still continue to have opportunities, I think, as we work with these different stakeholders, both that are collaborating to try to drive this change and those that are, in some regard, the recipients of the collaboration, and how do we effectively engage them and help empower them and empower and influence their buildings that they sit in to continue to reduce and look for opportunities.
Great. Rob, from your standpoint.
Yeah, I just want to dig down a little deeper on 2 points that Kevin and Rob referred to. So Duke Energy, they were successful in meeting the goal they had to for Smart Energy Now. And now there's Smart Energy in offices, which is kind of behavior change round 2. And that's looking at learning from the lessons from the first round and employing them in the second round. And one of the things we've been talking to Duke about is the opportunity to not only focus just on energy with the behavior change program, but also to factor in water and waste. So that's one thing that I think will help us continue the behavior change piece, because we don't want it to just be a one-time behavior change, because as we all know, some habits are easier to break than others, such as turning off your lights. But one of the other things that we're doing is this energy roundtable, which I think has really great potential to really put a dent in energy use. And I wanted to illustrate it a little through an example. One of the buildings that Envision has been talking to is where BB&T is located. And the UNC Charlotte team came in and did the assessment of the building and basically said, I can't remember what the percentage is, but it was a huge energy reduction if they did a complete lighting retrofit with controls, because the lighting is so old in there. And one of the values that Envision brings to the table is not only that audit, but one of the things Envision can do is help them vet potential vendors. Because you'll hear from these building managers is people are approaching us all the time with the silver bullet, and we're so busy just keeping the lights on that we don't have time to figure out who's got the best product and what works. So Envision, through its experts and others, can say, okay, we're going to bring 3 to 4 vendors to the table. They can bid on it. And then the last thing we're working on is the financial piece. And I'm not sure if folks are familiar with PACE financing, but PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy Bonds. And North Carolina has legislation. Unfortunately, it's set to expire at the end of June, but indications are that the General Assembly is going to get rid of the sunset provision. But what that allows is for the city of Charlotte, or really any municipality, to float a bond that can be used for energy efficiency. A financial institution purchases it and then is allowed to give lower interest loans, in this case to the commercial sector, and they have a longer period of time to pay it back. So one of the things we've been working on is trying to bring this kind of the last piece of that package to the roundtable. We'll do your audit, we'll help you find vendors, and we're going to find really attractive financing for you and give them this all kind of a la carte.
And there's one more dimension even to that, is the landlord-tenant business model that exists today. And I think you said earlier, if the tenant doesn't pay the bill, why do they care, and how do you get them motivated? Well, we've all heard green leases, but there's maybe not just a green lease, maybe there's more of a sub-metered lease, a little bit simpler, where you drive that care and that financial interest down further and further. So we all know the further that gets down to the individual person, that's where the actual results can happen.
And I'm sorry, the most important piece, well, not the most important, the payment is put on that entity's property tax. That's why it's property assessed clean energy bonds. So once a year, usually when they get their property tax bill, there'll be a line item that says you owe $100,000 or whatever to pay off your loan. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say application development associate, a tool to make it easier for that transparency at the tenant level, at the floor level, for all the people that we want to see engage in the behavioral change, if we make it easier for them to see the results of their actions, all the better. So we're working on that as well.
Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, the good news for me is that there's been a technology explosion in the building space, and you know, the things that were maybe out of reach from a capital investment standpoint a few years ago are very much within reach today. You mentioned the lighting retrofit. You guys walk around a Lowe's or a Home Depot today, and you look in the lighting section, there's LED lighting all over the place, and it's, you know, fantastic technology, 60 to 90% more efficient than what's out there on the market. Better quality of light, more even distribution, goes on and on. I mean, the story just keeps getting better. Fault detection diagnostics and continuous commissioning, these analytics platforms exploded over the last few years, and these are pretty low cost of entry, but it's basically using technology to kind of help you manage the building in a way and to a level of transparency that we've never had before. The technology that you're walking around today with your iPhone is now kind of being pointed toward the building sector, and it's really, really, really exciting time to be in that space, and lots of options to be able to drive efficiencies in a much more effective way than in the past.
I think I'm feeling good about that 2016 target, right?
You struck a nerve.
Huh? Let's go to the beginning. We made the decision to make a commitment at the Clinton Global Initiative. When you make a commitment there, they vet it, then they also measure it. Do y'all believe that using the Clinton Global Initiative, did that in any way shape or influence the project, and if so, how? Rob?
From an awareness perspective, there's no doubt it got us much higher on many more radar screens than we otherwise would have been. So that's a wonderful thing. And you know, I think a number of the people on the panel were involved in making that happen, so I'll let them speak to it.
I mean, to me, I think it set the tone from collaboration up front, that we brought the collaboration to the table, that we were willing to put the stake in the ground. And I think from the Clinton Global Initiative, in addition to the awareness, it also drove accountability. So we actually have responsibility to go back on a certain frequency and report our results, report on our lessons learned. We did that about a year ago at the Americas Conference. And so it created that ability, as well as some additional networking opportunities that have been created, both from solution providers as well as others that are interested in pursuing some of their own initiatives and wanting to learn more about some of our lessons learned.
Yeah, I'd almost ask you the same question because you were involved from the very beginning of this. You know, from my perspective and my role, it was a great platform to convince those that I needed to allow the city to engage with it. When you have, you know, the head of Duke Energy, the head of Cisco, the head of Verizon, and the mayor standing on a stage announcing this, there's obviously something to it as opposed to another one of Rob's crazy projects. So it definitely helped internally, and then just, you know, echoing what folks said, I think going forward there's this opportunity to say, hey, we've got something else new. Can we come back, CGI, and tell you what we launched here a few years ago and all the great stuff that we've done with it?
I think it showed us in one day when we heard a much higher calling and purpose. I mean, we all love Charlotte. We all thought this would be a great model, even great for the utilities. But at that scale, I think everybody felt just a higher sense of purpose and motivation to really drive through. And not to mention that the announcement date was a lot sooner than our planned date. But
that's how life works out.
But it was really quite a shot.
Kurt, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo all the rest. I was probably not as close to it back then as some of you were, but to echo Rob's comment, I'm sure the exposure has brought more service providers to Charlotte than might have otherwise come, and that's been a huge benefit for us. So,
I'm always interested in projects and surprises, or what I would call aha moments. Tom, I mean, as you work through this, any aha moments?
You mean in the project in general?
Yes.
I really think CGI was one of those aha moments in that not only what we all just said, but you just touched on the vendors, because the solution provider, Cisco and Verizon, all of a sudden realized this truly was a global model. And I think that was a moment where we went from trying to do something great for Charlotte that we thought had some framework models to everybody involved in the project really realize at that moment that it was going to be a CGI, that this was a model. So when you bring in those really big companies who now get that sense of repeatability, I think that was really a great moment.
Anybody else have an aha?
For me, I think, and Rob hit on it earlier, this is the concept of smart cities. So I think when we started this, I'm not sure the concept of smart cities existed. So as you look at smart cities now, and this idea of connectivity that you can create, engagement that you can create, with some sustainability focus in mind, it's very interesting to me, an aha of, wow, we kind of set the foundation for some of this. And I think as you look at where technology is going and the opportunities of creating interoperability within a system, we've seen very quickly that we don't have that today, and that we've kind of pieced and part things together, but we've made it work. So I think for me, it's laying the foundation potentially for the smart city and seeing the opportunities of pushing this forward, and probably looking back in 5 years and probably sitting around the table laughing of how antiquated we were, of how we went about doing this because of what technology allowed then and where we are from a technology standpoint.
It's pretty amazing that little Charlotte too went from kind of chasing around the world to see who's doing this, how's it work, is there anybody that's making it happen, to all of a sudden they're coming to Amy and the management team of Envision Charlotte and saying, come tell us what you're doing. It's pretty cool.
I think that's an interesting point, because we had this phrase during the project that downtown Charlotte was big enough to matter, but small enough to manage. And we had all the elements of any other major urban environment, but just smaller. Pro teams, corporate headquarters, government, private development, public transportation. We had all the elements of the great urban centers, but it was in an environment of size that we could manage and create that model.
My aha moment was, I mentioned earlier that I had an opportunity to travel to Barcelona, and that was in this fall, and we were, it was Barcelona every year has the Smart City World Expo. They've kind of decided that they are going to be the smart city of the world, and they have this big convention every year. But they also have awards that they give out, and they give out kind of the Smart City Award, an Innovative Project Award, and I can't remember what the third one is. And we put Envision in the hat for the Innovative Project, and we were one of 6 finalists. We didn't win, but sitting in this ballroom in Barcelona with a couple thousand people from all around the world, thinking back to, yes, we had this great start with Smart Energy Now, but the rest of it was a core group of us volunteering our time, sitting in a conference room in the Duke Energy Tower, thinking about the possibilities, and being called up on stage with Tel Aviv and Nairobi, and it was just kind of like, wow, we have really found something special here that has really great potential. And I could still just remember sitting there, and I guess it kind of was an aha moment. I didn't think of it at the time, though, but it was really exciting.
I guess my other question is this is an example of people coming together, making a project happen. And it was just people coming together, motivated to make it happen. Does any policy come to mind that grows out of this? Or were there any policies that played through the implementation of this project? Because often in life, policy comes and corporations, cities, governments, others go to work and implement. This is a case where people came together and implemented, and kind of like shale gas in a way. Shale gas was an example of smart people coming together, figuring out how to make it happen, and then the policy around shale gas is coming later. So is there any policy that comes out of this as you think about it? Rob?
It's really interesting.
I don't want to add any more regulations to you, but
Yeah, please. I guess what I would hope would come out of it is it may be more an informal policy result, but for all the reasons that Tom was just articulating, the ability to get it done in Charlotte, because Charlotte's kind of special in its size and level of cooperation, maybe we can push it out. Maybe we can use it as a lever to say, okay, for my portfolio, we did it in Charlotte. Now go do it in Chicago. Now go do it in wherever. So it can be a way of pushing it, because it's clear to everybody in the room and everyone involved in this stuff how important it is, but it's not easy. So if you can create an example and then push it out into these systems, it's an opportunity.
other comments on this?
Yeah, I think one of our approaches was we wanted to inspire policy, maybe as opposed to create it.
Got it.
And we had very much of a very defined carrot approach and not a stick approach. There are many municipalities and states and codes and laws where it's a stick. You must reveal your energy consumption. You must do this kind of thing. And there's a lot of that going on and some good in it. But what we wanted to do was to create an environment where there was no reason to say no. And so we very carefully and very purposefully put together a value proposition that said, look, we're going to unite here as a community to reduce energy consumption. Now, you might call it carbon, you might call it profit, you might call it economic development. It's the same action produces 3 different kinds of results, fine. And so we really didn't take a strict environmental approach or a strict capitalistic approach. We spent a lot of time talking about every single word as to not alienate folks and to draw them in. And the result of that, one of the most humbling results, notwithstanding the energy reductions, was we got 99% of building owners to contractually sign up to participate in this program. And it was not a pledge, it was a document that had insurance issues and liability issues in it. And so, that was to me one of the foundational successes, was to create an environment where